Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Salatu Wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Hope you all are doing well. Today I'm planning to cover another area which is called strategy and the role of a chief strategy officer in any organization. In probably from Bangladesh perspective, we don't see so many chief strategy officer working in our country, especially not in local companies, but even in multinationals, there are very rare. It's very rare that people are working under the name chief strategy officer. And what I have observed that even there are some roles as there are some departments and roles as looking after the business strategy or something, but there are confusion. People are not really know about it, and still some people in from our country, from Bangladesh, people think strategy means business development. Normally, when I applied for a strategy role in organization, they are actually looking for someone who will lead the business development part of the organization. But strategy is not, whether strategy is involves with business development or not, that is not the question. But I will come up from different perspective. I refer one book written on the great I would say from my strategy understanding came from with the Palladium Group, Robert S. Kaplan and David Norton, and they wrote a book. They wrote books on many things, but the core driving thing of strategic management is balance scorecard. They are the pioneer of the idea, the concept of balance scorecard, and probably it has been 20 years now. I'm really working with this balance scorecard episode and finding it the balance scorecard, and they came up with the strategy map later on. And I recommend two books now for the people who are really enthusiastic about strategy. You must read, you can read or must read a book called Execution Premium. And there is another book I refer from a different perspective of strategy, that is called Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley and Roger Martin. If you put these two concepts together, and your understanding on strategy will be very clear. So for today's purpose, let me define strategy. What is strategy? Strategy is a bundle of choices. In the organization, we take decisions. We take short-term decision, long-term decision, but definitely strategy is something for a long-term perspective. The choices you make, the bundle of choices you make, that is your strategy, that ultimately gives you a winning formula for the organization from different perspective. So that is for today, but I invite all of you to read those books I mentioned. And also it will be a deficient thing if I don't mention one strategy guru, that is called Michael Porter. He is the person who really guided the business organization to really find and formulate strategies. And he said in his lectures in different and scenarios, there are many misguided misunderstanding about strategy. Even people, what they think strategy is not at all a strategy. So let me tell you one thing. In one word, strategy is a winning formula. But if you ask any organization, most of them will say they have a strategy. But if you ask them, do you have a written strategy? Then the problem happens. They will not show you their strategy. That is the problem. And okay, let me I will not, to keep my session short, I will not repeat the 6 steps that is mentioned in Execution Premium, or if you read Strategy Focused Organization by Robert S. Kaplan and David Norton. Also there are books on strategy maps, there are books on alignment. There are many books. They are the gurus of strategy. So read all the books they wrote. That will be helpful. There is no doubt. If you are willing to pursue your career I will not say strategist, but if you add something, the strategic perspective of your own domain, then you should read those books. That will help. So let me go to the main thing that I came up with. I wanted to share. So what is the role of a chief strategy officer? So let me again, as I speak, I also studied those books. So whatever I will share, these are the gist and something taken from their books, and I will try to explain in my own way. So number one role of a strategist is like an architect, and architect in a sense, because the strategy involves strategic planning. Strategy involves the development of the strategy involves the execution planning also. So as an architect, initially the chief strategy officer, they give a framework, like the architect gives a framework for the building, for a building. That's why the architect, the strategist, he basically gives a framework, and he put all the resources available to work on those frameworks, and he managed the whole thing. So that is the number one role. Is strategist is an architect, and plans, he helps planning, for strategic planning. He helps the execution planning. And also he ensure that things are happening. So number one is architect. Number two is bridge maker. The bridge maker, bridge maker. What do I mean by bridge maker? When someone from the very top want to see the organization, I mentioned one thing. There another role that is called CFO, Chief Financial Officer. He can see the business from the top. So there is from the view perspective, CFO mindset must be within CFO, within the Chief Strategy Officer also, because he needs to understand what is happening in the organization. As money is the blood of the organization, there's a CFO can see whole thing, and the Chief Strategy Officer must also see the whole thing. That's why I say, whenever the Chief Strategy Officer is working as an architect, so he can see the gaps in the organization. So as a strategist, as a bridge maker, the Chief Strategy Officer, what does he do? He basically see and identify if there is any gap, or even alignment gap is there or not. If there is a gap, especially alignment gap, he basically works to close those gaps in the organization, and he ensures the alignment in the organization is done. It is very crystal clear. Unfortunately, there are many misalignment in the organization, and people are working in isolation and in a silo, and that's why we are not getting the best results from the organizations. The number two, bridge maker. Number C, creative cooperation. It is something different from bridge making. Creative cooperation means it definitely, the strategist, the role is to create creative cooperation in the organization, to bring synergy in the organization, so that the best possible result can be exerted from the efforts we put from our thinking, from even to ensure this creative cooperation. You deal with the competition in a different way. So strategist roles is not there are many easy solution without creativity. So solution with the creativity is somewhat difficult, and role of Chief Strategy Officer is to ensure that in organizations people are not coming up with the band-aid solutions. They are basically coming up with a creative cooperation and synergistic solutions for their problem, or from the gaps they identify. So that's the role of a Chief Strategy Officer. Number 4, D. The role of a Chief Strategy Officer is drive change, and initially it is driving change, and ultimately the Chief Strategy Officer drives transformation in the organization. I ask a question. You ask any big organization when last time they went through a big transformation? Many organizations are not transforming. If within 5 years you are not transforming, some part of the organization, you are in a dangerous zone. So why I'm saying that? Because we do strategic planning after 5 years, 3 to 5 years, and that was the natural thing that was happening. But what I would I recommend, you must engage someone in the organization who will drive change and who will also drive the business transformation in the organization. So that was the drive change. Number five is E, the role of a CSO. E is ensure execution of the strategy in a different part of the organization. Ensure by enforcing the strategic viewpoints, by enacting the strategic thinking in the operational people. That's why you ensure the execution is done on time, and you ensure there are reviews of the execution processes, and you ensure the results are coming from the organization. That was the five key roles I mentioned for the chief strategy officer. Now let me say something in a different way. The role of I already mentioned that the role of a chief strategy officer is kind of similar to chief financial officer. Chief financial officer also ensures the organizational budgeting, organizational financial planning are executed, and in line with the performance management system, they ensure the performance targets are achieved and the financial objectives are achieved through the budgeting and the organizational business planning process. So if you fine tune, or if you can merge these two functions together, the one organization, the chief strategy officer can take help from the performance management system when it is aligned with the strategic planning and also the financial budgeting business planning processes. So that two things or three things can be merged together, and a chief strategy officer can work as a coordinator, as I said, as a bridge maker, as an architect, as a creative, ensuring a creative co-operator, and also making sure the executions are happening. So the final thought for today, the chief financial officer looks after the balance sheet, whether how the organization health are income statement or balance sheet. But probably chief strategy officer will not look into income statement, but he definitely will look into balance scorecard, not balance sheet, but balance scorecard. And the goal of chief strategy officer to ensuring sustainability and growth of the organization. Why I am adding growth? Because without growth, sustainability is not possible. So all things are growing. The bottom line, the middle line is growing. So you have to have to grow the top line as well as the bottom line to sustain the market. So that was for today. Again, I tried to clarify. Now the question is whether business development can be called as a strategic department or not, because this is the reason of misunderstanding. My last point was that if you look for growth of the organization, people look for the CSO. In my last video, I mentioned that the organizational growth is driven by the COO. Also, definitely CSO can help, and the business development part can go under the role, can go under the COO, not the CSO. CSO is a completely different role, and yes, initially based on the size of the organization, what happens, there are if you have time and resources, people normally take extra responsibility, and extra responsibility is for the specific organization, but this is not the solution for every organization. In one of my career as a CFO, I was looking after many other department, but as my role was, I was a CFO, but I was looking after HR, admin, and supply chain, along with the finance. But that isn't a CFO's role. So role clarity. I mean, I always say something. The role clarity is so important in the organization. Do not mix up everything. Yes, somebody can take multiple role. There is no issue. But the role itself must be clarified. And you play two role. You take two roles responsibility. You cannot say I was doing that thing and so I missed those things. It is not acceptable in the organization. So finally, sorry I deviated from the core topic. Anyway, I will try to come with other C-level role inshallah in future. Until next time, I wish all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.